Hey, welcome to today's class. Great thing about the online class is if we're there in person, we might have to do things like shave and dress nicely. Don't have to do that here in the online class, so hopefully not offensive to any of you. We are through our first test. Um, Not everybody has completed the test as I do this video today. I believe we have 14 that have been completed. 7 right now with an A, 5 with a B, 2 with a C. There may be a slight curve. I do have, I believe, 298s, which make it a little more problematic to curve it, but we'll look at that once everyone has taken the test. And now you kind of have an idea of how they go. They'll always be multiple choice, they'll always be true and false. It's hard to do a short answer, fill in the blank kind of thing, just because one little letter that's out of whack or something makes the question makes it wrong, and so we don't want to have that. So hopefully, um, we'll get all the tests done by the time they're supposed to be done, and then we'll look at the curve. But again, I think the fact we got 7 A's right now of the 14, 12 of the 14 an A or a B, I think says the test was probably pretty fair, and so we'll work on that over the next couple days. We're gonna have 2 assignments this week that'll be graded assignments. Then 2 more next week. We don't have that many, much longer to go here in the class. Also, we're gonna have a Q&A this week later with a guest. I'll put that on the message board. I have you send me questions for that as well. And again, um, want to do one of the assignments this week on video, and so hopefully we get to that. Today we're going to talk about managing personnel. We've talked about all these different things, ethics of management, um, types of management, skills, functions, all those things. Today we're going to actually talk about just actually managing personnel. Now, I thought there's a great video that I think kind of represents management as well as almost anything that I can show you guys. You guys may have seen it before, but let's take a look. But with Sarah Brosnan, we started out with capuchin monkeys. So what we did is we put 2 capuchin monkeys side by side. Again, these animals, they live in a group. They know each other. We take them out of the group, put them in a test chamber. And there's a very simple task that they need to do. And if you give both of them cucumber for the task, the 2 monkeys side by side, they're perfectly willing to do this 25 times in a row. So cucumber, even though it's really only water in my opinion, but cucumber is perfectly fine for them. Now, if you give the partner grapes, the food preferences of my capuchin monkeys correspond exactly with the prices in the supermarket. And so if you give them grapes, that's a far better food, then you create inequity between them. So that's the experiment we did. Recently, we videotaped it with new monkeys who had never done the task, thinking that maybe they would have a stronger reaction, and that turned out to be right. The one on the left is the monkey who gets cucumber. The one on the right is the one who gets grapes. The one who gets cucumber, note that the first piece of cucumber is perfectly fine. The first piece she eats. Then she sees the other one getting grape, and you will see what happens. So she gives a rock to us, that's the task. And we give her a piece of cucumber, and she eats it. The other one needs to give a rock to us. And that's what she does. And she gets a grape. And she eats it. The other one sees that. She gives a rock to us now, gets again cucumber. She tests a rock now against the wall. She needs to give it to us. And she gets cucumber again. So this is basically the Wall Street protest that you see here. And that basically is management, right? You can replace the cucumbers with rocks, with dollars, right? People want their money, want whatever it would be, and want to be treated fairly and equally, and I think those monkeys didn't necessarily feel that. Management basically defines a process in which individuals work with and through other people to accomplish organizational objectives. We talked about that in the very first slide we ever talked about here in the class. And again, I think as a manager, you need to realize employees are really the most important asset of any organization. And that even comes to if you're doing something yourself and you're running your own business, you're the most important part of it. If you've got the idea, you're the brains behind it. You're the one doing all the different the editing, the graphics, whatever it would be. You have to treat the employees as your most important asset in any organization. And we talked about this with emotional intelligence. Managers who fail to properly manage human resources have to deal with problems related to turnover, low morale, and inefficient performance. People basically want to be treated fairly. They want to be treated equally. They want to be treated as if they are important. And I think those are the things that really make you as a manager very effective. Something called force field analysis, which is a technique used to determine how many individual positions are needed to accomplish tasks. And basically, it looks at two things: driving forces, which are positive forces, such as, hey, if we pay you this much money, we give you a raise, how does that work? And then it has restraining forces, such as employee apathy, hostility towards equipment. Hey, I need a new computer, I need a new camera, I need those type of things. And so force field analysis looks at those things and decides how many people are needed to do the job. For the joke, how many so-and-so does it take to change a light bulb? So, managing personnel, managers recommend, oversee hiring, firing, which is termination, how much somebody gets paid, things like vacation time. I'm going through that right now. Everybody wants vacation time, performance reviews, and then training and development. So, when you're hiring, it requires effective recruitment strategies to identify qualified candidates. And basically, finding new employees involves a variety of internal and external approaches. You can recruit internally. Hey, we're here in a place like Texas Tech. You have a lot of people that want to work in different places. You can recruit internally, and that always helps build morale because you think, hey, if I do my job, I might be able to move up or might move into a different area. And so you can also go external. Different ways you can go: job fairs. Texas Tech goes through these all the time. If you're a graduating senior, through this. You can go to job fair. Keep applications on file, unsolicited applications. Anyone sometimes sends me a resume or something, I keep it. And advertising depends on where you're going to advertise it, right? Used to be, hey, you put something in the local newspaper and be done with it, but now there are different ways to do things. But there's always national trade publications and things that you can do. Other things, employment agencies, just depends on the place you're looking for. That's mostly clerical and things like that. You can go through employment agencies. Consultants and headhunters, when you get to a certain level, headhunters will come to you and basically shop you around to different places, and they charge a fee for their services. And part of that deals with, hey, they'll do a lot of the background checks and some of the other things, and that's where their fees come in, so you don't have to do those kind of things. Head coaches go through this a lot. There's people that go and look for head coaches, and they'll do a lot of the background checks and things you don't have to do. Colleges, universities, and other outlets. Obviously, you guys are all coming out of college, looking for work. Word of mouth, networking is practice of establishing contacts with media professionals. I always call somebody and say, hey, do you know anybody? Do you have somebody? I get calls all the time. If you guys apply for a job somewhere and somehow the person knows that you were in my class, a lot of times they'll call me and say, hey, what do you think of so-and-so? So I know they were in your class. Best thing to do. Internships, obviously, I would stress all semester long, all the time. Get an internship if you can, because I've got in our athletic communications office, I have 7 full-time people. 3 of them started out as interns for us. And then again, there's other sources. recommendations from other employers, professional organizations, and things of that nature. Lots of different ways to get your name out, lots of different ways for me to find out about you, and then you get to the process. So once you get to that, then you go through the selection process and you interview somebody and you go through the whole thing. It's like dating, right? What do you like? What do you don't like? What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? All those things. You've read all the books. I've read all the books. You know all the right answers. I know the questions that I'm supposed to ask. You know the questions I'm going to ask. And you go through all this. So once you've gone through the process, then you go through the interview. So let's say so the last job that I hired for, and I just hired the young lady last week. She started a week ago, and I had 72 applications for her job. It's a difficult situation. That's a lot to go through. 72, and I didn't have an idea who I was going to hire. So basically, 72 fresh, new names, new resumes, and things. So the first thing I do is I go through the 72, try to find reasons not to select them. Cut it down to a certain deal, certain number. I get to that number. I again go through and say, is there a reason I don't want to hire this person? Then eventually I get to a manageable number. Then I start doing the interviews. And the reason I do that is because I don't want to interview 70 people. I don't want to interview 10 people. I don't want to interview 5 people. Interviewing is expensive. It's time consuming. It's a lot of wasted time and effort. So if you can get down to, hey, I'm just serious about the people, those are the people I'm going to bring in. And then more than one interview may be required. So for example, for the young lady we just hired, after I interviewed a couple, I had my staff interview because I wanted to see who fit in well with the staff. So a lot of times it's more than one interview. And this is what I would tell you people. Then it is appropriate for you to understand what you're going to go through. Who am I going to talk to? How many people? What are the positions? All those different things you should know. For you, you should look at it as the same thing. I'm interviewing this company as well. Is this a place I want to work? Is this a place I want to be a part of? And then this all finishes when finally somebody says, you know what? I'm going to offer you the job. And then you say, yeah, I'll take the job. And then you come to work. So it's a long, involved process. Then when you get the person here, you've got to go through everything else. You've got to introduce the new employee to the way the company works. You've got to take them around. It's all part of what's called the orientation process. And really that should happen the very first days. We have a company handbook and different areas that you go through telling people what they get and what they don't, what they, vacation time, sick time, those things. And there's a policies and procedure manuals that contains things about non-discrimination, how you be promoted, how you advance, how you have annual performance reviews, what kind of benefits you get here at Texas Tech. We have great benefits. Obviously, that's one of the things you do when you work for the state. You've got great insurance, you've got retirement, all those other things. Disciplinary actions, we have a certain set of steps of things we do when you get in trouble. And then if you have grievance, the formal grievance procedures. So you should understand all these things before you actually say, okay, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to go to work. And managers should promote ongoing development for employees, all those different things. We have what's called Leadership Academy here, where you can learn to. We have like speaking, we have leadership classes, different things, public speaking classes, different things you can do that we think are part of professional development. When you work here, you have a performance review. It's important to an employee's overall growth and development. The person, your boss, conducts the review. If any of you work at Texas Tech, Texas Tech has a performance review based on a 7-point scale, 1 to 7. If you get a 4.0 overall, it means you're doing your job, you're eligible for a raise, you're eligible for anything else. Less than 4, you need to work on an improvement plan. Texas Tech basically says if you're doing your job to an acceptable level and you're really good at your job, you get a 4. If you are even better than that and you're doing something that's really fantastic for the university, you get a 5. If you're doing something that's earth shattering, you get a 6. And if you're saving the world, you get a 7. I used to work for President Nellis. A nice man, a good man. He'd give me 7s across the board. And again, that's not really, it seems nice. It seems like a good thing to do. And you go, wow, he really likes me. But does that help me as an employee? Probably not. So performance review allows the employer to identify where you're particularly weak or strong. If I'm all 7s, it tells me, hey man, I'm pretty great, and doesn't really identify where I need to work on things. And also, a good chance for me to sit down with my boss, my employees sit down with me and say, hey, where can we do better? And again, this is your basis for salary adjustments, merit pay, promotion, and all those things. I had a guy that works for me that wanted to fire one of his employees. So we looked up the employee's last 2 performance reviews, and the guy had a 4.58 overall in one, a 4.37 overall in the other. And we're like, how can you fire this guy when he's been getting good performance reviews? So they're only as good as the feedback and the information you put into them. So I should always initiate the performance reviews for my employees. I shouldn't have an employee say, hey, Gio, can I have an employee performance review? Something we should do annually with our people. Should be done in person, but written copies are placed in the employee's file. And again, should focus on the actual specifics of the job and the actual performance of the employee. And again, put enough time to avoid interruption things. If you don't like your performance review, you should be able to appeal it. And so some things for a successful performance review: allow enough time for review, stay calm, be objective, be helpful to the employee, point out areas where the performance is poor, and offer ideas for improvement. You can't be one of those things that you just say, hey, you're awful, don't like you, your coworkers don't like you, get better. You've got to be able to point out these are actual areas that you need help on. A couple other points to this: at all times, be honest, state opinions clearly, do not confuse opinions with facts. As a supervisor, your opinions are not relevant in a review. Avoid using other employees as an example of positive performance. It's like parenting, right? Why can't you be more like your brother? No, you can put them out to say, hey, here are some things that I like that our people are doing, but you shouldn't say, hey, be more like Bill. Bill does this, Bill does that. Concentrate only on the employee's performance and expectations. Do not stress deficiencies that are hard to overcome. Sometimes you're just limited in what you can do, and so you don't want to spend a lot of time on an area that you can't really do something about. And again, the discussion of behavior should be job related, not, hey, I don't like your political preferences. I don't like the car you drive. I don't like your girlfriend. And then offer specifics and offer examples that can help clarify important parts. Now, I want to go back to, like, if you're talking politics around the office, then you can say, hey, this isn't what we do here. That's when you can bring up things like politics or things that are maybe typically outside the norm. But for the most part, you're talking about their day-to-day performance of their job. Good performance reviews, good work habits pave the way for promotion. And again, almost in anything you want to do, I mean, you want to get better, you want to improve, you want to move up. Sometimes it means a bigger market, sometimes it means a different job, whatever. But again, you get it through, you start with great performance reviews and doing your job. Increasingly, many electronic media organizations have reduced the number of personnel. You see this with newspapers. When people leave newspapers, it used to always be somebody leaves, somebody gets hired. Not working that way anymore. Now somebody leaves, your job gets split up. So it makes it harder and harder to get promoted. And we're seeing this happening in a couple different ways. Downsizing, which is really become common here in our industry, saying, you know what, we don't need as many people to do these things. And then outsourcing uh, means bringing an outside person or people or firms to handle specific functions. And so we are hiring an outside agency to come in and help us with our branding. They're branding experts. We don't want to bring in and hire a bunch of people that are branding experts. So we think it's better to outsource that, to bring that in. Things like graphic design, video work, a lot of times it's outsourced. And so it's good if you own your own business because you're able to pick up on some of those things. And this, I love this. This came from the book. One type of turnover that occurs regularly in electronic media is termination. And that's true in any business. The turnover that's happening is because people are being fired. Why do you get fired? You're always late. You're always missing without an excuse. Engaging employment with another company, that just depends. If you get permission, you can have obviously another job. You can't follow instruction, not doing your job, contributing to a work environment that is hostile to other employees. We've all worked with people we don't like working with, right? They're not great environment. They're called toxic employees. You don't want to be one of those people, one of those toxic employees, because it ends up in termination. Whenever taking disciplinary action, management should document all charges in writing and notify the employee of the action. So if you work at Texas Tech, that stuff is easy because if I want to fire somebody, I have to have written documentation, have to have shown they've been disciplined, have to go through all these different sets of circumstances. They get a letter at the end. It's all written down. And again, we want to encourage a positive performance rather than somebody that creates kind of a threatening work environment. Terminations may be caused by numerous things. Again, we talked about some of the things. You're not following instructions, you're not doing your job, not coming to work, you're dropping the ball on things. And sometimes you're just saying, hey, we don't need these positions anymore. We're going to consolidate positions. And that's more of a layoff type than a termination. Part-time people are important to the success of companies, cause the same problems. Sometimes they feel like outsiders. They don't feel like part of the group. Managers should give part-time employees the same attention given full-time employees. And again, a lot of times you find your full-time employees from your part-time people, students, hourly workers that lead to a full-time job. Interns are the best way to get a job. When I got my first internship at Channel 28, Bill Jones, who is now a big deal in the Dallas-Fort Worth media market, Bill was a sports director. And this was in the old College of Media Communication building, mass communications building that you guys aren't even in anymore. And we used to have this big board on the, just like a cork board. And they put internship opportunities up there in little 3x5 cards. So this is in May. I was going to be here for summer school. So I went and interviewed with Bill Jones for an internship, had a great interview. And he said, yeah, great interview. I'm going to interview people throughout the summer, and I'll make a decision in August. And I was thinking, what? I didn't realize it was going to be that. So every couple of days, I'd go by the board in the hallway there in media communication, and I would take that 3x5 card down. And so in August, Bill called me and offered me the internship. It was called a practicum. It was actually, I got class credit for it. And he told me, interestingly enough, you were the only one that applied all summer long. And it wasn't until months later when I got to work with him and got to know him that I told him that, hey, the reason no one else applied is I took all the cards. I wouldn't suggest that now. It's hard to do that now with computers and the like. But again, internship, and interns make an important contribution to the process. Facilitate a good internship program. We have one of these in athletic communications. Interns should not be selected haphazardly. We get about 100 applications. We choose about 20 of those, And again, they should be evaluated similarly to other employees, and depends on the place, but we don't allow you to be an internship unless you're doing an internship unless you're uh, in the college and working at the or Texas Tech student. So you should be able to get credit for that. Not all of our internships do get credit, but you can. So social conditions have contributed to a diverse workforce. Managers must sensitively address the needs of a diverse workforce. You need to understand not everybody thinks like you do, not everybody acts like you do, not everybody looks like you do, not everybody worships like you do, not everybody votes like you do, not everybody dates like you do, and you have to think of those things as a manager. You have to say, I have to put all my thoughts aside. I'm doing what's best for this organization. And that's how you manage a diverse workforce. And because we are so highly regulated, electronic media organizations comply with laws and guidelines regarding the hiring and treatment of employees. So we have lots of issues of equal opportunity, non-discrimination in employment practices. And you need to be familiar with those things as you hire and as you manage. In 2003, the FCC implemented new EEO regulations for the media, covered how you distribute information about the jobs, uh, provide notice to different places about full-time job vacancies, and you have to have some recruitment initiatives within a 2 to 4 year period. So again, because of the way the business is regulated, the government is looking into it to say, we want to make sure you're hiring your people the right way. EEOC offers guidelines to clarify the many forms of harassment that can take place. Obviously, sexual harassment is included in that. Unwanted sexual advances, requests for sexual favors, other conduct of a sexual nature, either verbal or physical, looking at inappropriate things on your computer around other people, jokes that you think are funny, talking around people that, and it doesn't have to be somebody a different gender than you as well. You could be offending, you think you're telling a joke to a guy that really wants to hear it, doesn't want to hear it. Those are all different ways that could be considered sexual harassment. Managers should develop clearly defined policies to prohibit sexual harassment. They should establish communication programs so employees know their rights and procedures and where you report sexual harassment. We have at Texas Tech, we have something called Title IX, which is something that requires us to report anything that might be of unwanted sexual nature. You know, I had an employee once who another employee came to me and said, hey, I think this employee is having a relationship with a student worker, which is against the policy and against Title IX regulations. And the employee that told me said, look, I don't want you to do anything about it. I just wanted to tell you. And we always tell people, if you don't want us to do anything, don't tell us, because we are required to do something if we know about it. So those are all part of the deal with sexual harassment, and need to be careful, need to be sensitive, need to be responsible as part of management. There's also a couple other laws, Fair Labor Standards Act, FLSA we call it, which deals with your overtime, the amount of hours you can work. The National Labor Relations Act, Equal Employment Act, Age Discrimination in Employment Act. That doesn't really concern you guys. It concerns a guy getting my age. If I find myself out of a job, I may be discriminated against when I'm trying to find a job in the future. Equal Pay Act, which basically says the equal pay for the equal work. American with Disabilities Act, which allows for access and things like that for people with disabilities. Family and Medical Leave Act. I have 2 employees right now, both expecting babies. They'll be able to take FMLA when their babies are born, and all the things you need to know about. The great thing when you work at a place like Texas Tech, you have a huge HR department that handles a lot of those things too. We don't deal with this much in Texas, working with unions. Unions exist to represent workers. Such a thing called collective bargaining, which is the negotiation between the union and management. Again, Texas doesn't really deal with a lot of that. Depends on different states you're in, and obviously they need to work well together, the unions and management. The structure of media organizations has changed. Used to be obviously top down, and sometimes that's not the most uh, efficient management. Steve Jobs talked about this with Apple, something called flattening, which is basically more of a vertical management that everyone is uh, kind of together on ideas. Everyone has input. It's different from the old standby of what we've talked about: upper management, middle management, lower management type of structure. And flattening is as you kind of downsize, allows employees to have more decision making. Leaner structures, a continued development, a move towards self generated projects as opposed to departmental tasks are all traits of organizations that have moved beyond hierarchy. And hierarchy, again, is somebody coming to work and going, you know what, I think I'm going to assign these duties today. Flattening is more of a servant leader type of structure. And again, technology has aided a lot of that. It's forced many changes in structure, opening up lines of communication, interaction between managers and employees. And again, communication is such a key that you need to let people know what's happening, how it happens. Successful managers integrate people skills and don't just sit at their computer and send out emails. I try to go around. I have so many employees. I do try to go around on a day-to-day basis and see as many of them as I can. Sometimes I can't, and I just have to sit in the in my office and and send out emails and do those kind of things. That's not the most efficient way. And so successful managers find a way to combine everything together and make sure that everyone has input and everyone is being heard. So that is it for managing our employees. Check. We're going to have a assignment online for that. That'll be one of your 20-point assignments. Again, tomorrow, hopefully, or soon, I'll put up the statistics for the tests. Hopefully, the final 6 people or so will get it taken here in the next few hours, and we'll make sure that's all done. So, again, thank you for your rapt attention, and we will talk to you tomorrow.